Let's hit it.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about the mental change. We will.
Hi everyone, welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled that you can join us today. If you liked our opening song, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band, and you can download that on any of your favorite music platforms. For those of you that are new to our show, Alzheimer's Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We want to talk with real people doing real things pertaining to dementia. So all voices are welcomed. If you're interested and have a story too, please reach out to me at radio@alzheimersspeaks.com. Now, before I introduce our guest today, and we have a team of people from the Kemper Cognitive Wellness Clinic, I'm going to do a couple of shout outs. So one, I want to shout out to Dementia Map, the global resource directory we put together that not only has resources, but it also has events. Please check that out at dementiamap.com. Also, you're going to want to take a peek at the Memory Cafe directory because there are some memory cafes that are coming online now. So please check that out, memorycafedirectory.com. And then Coro Health is still letting people download 2 of their apps. You're not going to want to miss out on that. So go to Coro, that's CORO Health.com for more information. There are also a few events I want to give a shout out to. So Lorenzo's House is having an event called Lorenzo's Camp, which is going to be June 21st from 10 to 4 p.m. Central Time. And that is going to be for youth. So young kids that are dealing with parents that are living with dementia, this will be a great online adventure for them to be able to connect with others. They can go to www.lorenzoshouse.org/youth-camp. Also, I want to lift up Maud's Ventures. This is a really cool opportunity for 3 challenges that they're putting out there to get seed funding, $50,000 to $100,000 for 3 different projects that they have challenges on. One is for adaptive clothing, the second is for aphasia, and the third is for respite care. So go ahead and check out Maud's Ventures. Last I want to shout out is a global challenge for dementia, which is tagged Together, the number 4 Dementia, Together for Dementia. And it's a conference that is going to have a variety of experts from around the world. And it's going to be held November 2nd of 2021. And it is being sponsored by the Dementia Research Charity Brace. And you can register for an early bird ticket by going to buff.ly/3F5PFUY, and that FU is capitalized at the end and then Y. So that's buff.ly/3F5P capital F capital U-Y. So let's introduce you to our friends at the Kemper Cognitive Wellness. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation. I kind of told you earlier in the warm up there, but we are so honored to have Kemper Cognitive Wellness with us. And we've got their team, and we're going to be talking about protecting your cognitive health and a boot camp for brain health and wellness overall. So these guys are kind of leading the cause, or one of the leaders in the US here regarding cognitive health. And so it's really an honor to have them with us. So before we start our conversation, I should probably just give you a little background on each of them. And I'm going to start with Dr. Nate Bergman, who is a board certified physician. And he's also the Chief Scientific Wellness Officer for Kemper Cognitive Wellness, which is located in Cleveland, Ohio. He previously co-developed the brain health program at the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, which is a renowned center in and of itself. And Dr. Bergman is an author of peer-reviewed medical articles. He's a podcaster, and he's a father of 5 very neurodiverse children, which sounds like an interesting role in and of itself. So welcome, Dr. Bergman. How are you doing today?
Well, thanks for having us, Laura. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to introduce your sidekicks here, and I'm going to go to.
Not my sidekicks. This is the team, and I feel like I'm the sidekick here.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's a nice sentiment to have when you all feel equal in that. So that's absolutely fantastic. To me, that's kind of the meaning of a true team in terms of how you function. So Alison Connors is a certified brain health trainer and functional medicine health coach, which a lot of people don't even know what that is. So we'll learn more about that. She has developed a very unique offering called the Brain Boot Camp. And that is a cognitive and physical training program to improve attention, memory, and thinking. Alison also works closely with Kemper clients to coach and support them in their implementation of personalized protocols for optimizing memory and cognition. So welcome, Alison.
Thanks, Lori. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about Brain Boot Camp.
Fantastic. Can't wait to hear all about it. And then we have Jenny Kemper. She is the director of the Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and she is leading a team of 10 to raise awareness and deliver opportunities for individuals and their families to push back against cognitive decline. Kemper is gaining, like I said, groundbreaking kind of lead into this brain health center or arena in the US, and they have services and support for people living with or just wishing to prevent Alzheimer's or different types of dementia or other cognitive losses. So welcome, Jenny. This is an exciting time to have you guys all with us.
Yes, thanks, Lori. We're happy to be here.
Well, I'm going to start out with Dr. Bergman. And Dr. Bergman, if you can tell our listeners a little bit about some of the major advances that you're seeing in neurodegenerative assessments and treatment. I know there's a lot going on in this field all of a sudden.
Right. So obviously, as you know, and I'm sure all your listeners know, for years, decades, there's really been no significant. There's been some incremental improvements, minor, but billions and billions of dollars spent. And there's really been nothing that's been a big breakthrough in the world of Alzheimer's. And I think there are kind of two scenarios or two streams that are happening right now. One is that the landscape is shifting things to look more ahead of time, sort of predictive, like we look for cancer. The more we understand and know about Alzheimer's disease, the more we're thinking about, hey, when subtle cognitive complaints start, that's the time to begin to do the workup. Probably the good habits should start in our teens and 20s, but we all ignore those, right? So at least when things start to creep in, that's when the best time is to begin. So so one big shift is, and this is even happening with drug companies, is to look earlier, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. that alone, and looking at some of the sort of prevention and lifestyle factors, people like Dale Bredesen and Richard Isaacson and the Pacific Neuroscience Institute and the Shirzais down at Loma Linda in California. I mean, some people are talking about with, just the combination of the right kind of food, the right kind of exercise, sleeping, making sure sleep is dialed in for a long enough period of time, and learning how to manage stress and connect with other people. Like something like 90% of cases of Alzheimer's might be preventable. That's a very, that's an amazing claim. But those are some pretty serious researchers that have sort of are making those claims. I think that's the first stream, looking earlier and taking a look at what actually moves the needle in terms of brain health. The second is this idea of precision medicine or metabolic medicine. Some would refer to this as functional medicine. So subtyping. So just like you wouldn't say someone has cancer, you wouldn't say, you probably shouldn't be saying someone has Alzheimer's disease, right? We'd say breast cancer, or we'd say colon cancer, we'd say prostate cancer. We refer to the type of cancer. So I think, so my reading of the tea leaves in Alzheimer's is that that's probably going to be the way that this goes to some degree, is sort of subtyping. Alzheimer's, probably Parkinson's disease, several other kinds of dementia. We'll look at the different kinds of personalities, so the different presentations, if you will. Some person might have sort of a classic short-term memory loss, can't remember from now to 2 minutes ago or 30 seconds ago. Other people might have a lot of trouble just getting stuff done or saying words, but their memory might be more intact, right? So sort of the what we call the atypical presentations. And so there's this whole host of things that when we look under the hood, what we're doing, let's say at Kemper Cognitive Wellness, what we're doing is we're looking under the hood and seeing, can we determine what's driving this process? Why is Alzheimer's occurring? And if we can get some firm grip on why we think this is happening, we can push back. So it's like a really exciting time. And I think there's one other point I'd make. Is in addition to looking early, having more tools, more things and sort of targets to look for. The other interesting phenomenon here is that people are getting diagnosed earlier and earlier, right? And so the number of people being diagnosed between age 35 and 64 is rapidly rising. And that data has been out here, available for the last couple of years. And because, and again, in my opinion, Alzheimer's is sort of, that's the disease for the nursing homes. Nobody wants to go to nursing home. It's like this, unless you're deeply involved in it, like we are, it's just something you don't want to deal with. It still has, unfortunately, although it's changing, has a bit of stigma around it. But as more and more younger people that are sort of in the middle of midlife, beginning of the sort of golden years, as it were, are getting diagnosed, they have more means, more education, more desire to stay well, and more desire to push back. And so we're meeting more and more people like in their 50s and 60s and early 70s and mid 70s that are just like, well, I'm not ready to just like sign off my life and sort of ride out in the sunset and do a long goodbye. Even though, that's still a reality. We're not denying that that's a reality. What we're seeing though is more and more younger people that are saying, hey, is it possible that I could live with Alzheimer's as a chronic disease, like a cancer survivor, like an HIV survivor, like somebody who had a heart attack and open heart surgery? And so, where open heart surgery or stents was a big deal in like the 1970s, 1960s, even to some extent, right? So I think we're starting to see the beginnings of that in Alzheimer's and other kinds of dementia. So it's a really it's exciting time to get Alzheimer's. That's a strange physician joke, but there are a lot of things that you can do today that you probably wouldn't have been able to do 6 or 7 years ago, and there's certainly not the data for it.
Well, I think it's funny, your joke, because it's so true. There's not a better time in history to be able to get this disease because there is a lot more available. When you mentioned about the pushback from kind of the 50 to 70 years old, I remember my folks, my mom lived with it for 30 years, and the word of their primary physician for 40 years who they had was God. They weren't going to question him. And the rest of us were like, hey, something is off, and so for 10 years she was misdiagnosed with just hormones. It was just her hormones were off. They weren't doing anything to correct her hormones, but they were off. And yet my mom knew that it wasn't that. You mentioned, all these different lifestyle changes that we can make, and educating people at a younger level, which would be brilliant to even be able to do that in schools, because so many of the kids are seeing the ripple effect where their families are not telling them what's going on, yet their whole family dynamics has changed. And a lot of the kids feel like, what did I do wrong? And yet if they can see some of that and be part of that, I think it'd be an ideal time to get out there and be able to educate them as well. And then one question I did want to ask you about, because I haven't heard this, but I would love to see this. Is anybody, to your knowledge, doing any studies of why a diagnosis changes in terms of the body? A lot of them go, well, the doctor might have just been wrong, or they've gotten more information now where it's more zoned in. But is there something that's changing it from an Alzheimer's type symptom to now Lewy bodies? As far as what we can control. Have you heard of any studies on that?
Yeah, so most of the studies I'm aware of, so most of the best studies that are driving the movement and the awareness in the sort of neurology and to some extent the geriatrics community is what we're seeing on autopsy, right? So as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know, that most people, we can't be certain about a diagnosis of Alzheimer's until someone passes away. And if they allow for an autopsy, then we can be most certain. Under the microscope, what we're seeing is more and more mixed cases, more and more mixed pathology. So not just straight Alzheimer's, but a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of vascular dementia, a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of Lewy body dementia, a little bit of Alzheimer's, a little bit of Parkinson's, right? Even though Lewy body is very similar to Parkinson's, there's new types of dementias being discovered. So I think really, to me, there's a tremendous amount that we don't know. I was on the phone with someone who's 48-year-old mother of two teenage kids yesterday at night. I was driving home as a friend of a colleague, and she has nowhere to turn. She thinks she might have some like a prions in her brain, like an infection eating her brain. And so like I think we also have to acknowledge that there's quite a bit we don't know. Now, as we learn more about from the pathology, right? So from autopsy studies, and we start to see what they coordinate to in terms of, okay, what does that look like on MRI? What does that look like in terms of a lumbar puncture? Because again, as you know, really recently, and I think this in some places and still pockets, you go to your primary care doctor, she's gonna, you do a 8-minute screening test, dementia, get your affairs in order, here's the age page, maybe we'll try Sparacept, goodbye, right? I mean, of course, it's done with more heart usually than that, but you and I have had talks, Lori, we find some of the way that traditional healthcare goes appalling. But I do think that when you look at when you take this diagnosis a little bit out of the hands of just a primary care provider, as it used to be, someone walks in 65, 75, when 65 was old, right? Remember when 65 was old? When we weren't close to 65. So then, 75, 80, but once someone's 80, it's like, okay, well, this is dementia, and it doesn't really matter what kind, right? So it doesn't really matter what kind. But as people get more interested in advocating for themselves and have more information, things run in their family, they're able to get their own genetics, they're able to Google more about symptoms. So it's sort of forced the healthcare community to be able to become a little bit more aware. Now I want to talk with someone who really is focused on Lewy body and Alzheimer's and can sort of parse out the difference. Now, so far, there isn't a huge difference, although there's some differences from my perspective, but there are some differences in how we might treat a Lewy body dementia versus a primary progressive aphasia or Alzheimer's or whatever. But I think the first step is taking the pathology, learning what are the best tests to sort of say what kind of dementia is this. You look at what's happening with brain function, cognitive function, you put those things together, and you have a more informed neurologic community, more informed geriatricians, and so they're making more accurate diagnoses because of just have more information.
Well, I have to make a comment on the 65 was old because I'm going to be 62 here in another month, and it is not old anymore. Let me tell you.
Right, for sure.
And
And it
my-
really isn't. It really isn't.
Yeah, my opinion has very much changed. Also on autopsies, we did do an autopsy of my mom's brain, and she lived with it for like 30 years. And I don't know if you know Dr. Fry here in Minnesota, but he's just wonderful. And he sat down with me to kind of review it. And he said, Lori, I've never seen a brain this atrophied ever. And then he said, but that's what we should expect for 30 years.
Yeah.
And it pointed out that there, it was primarily Alzheimer's, but there was definitely some Lewy body and some Parkinson's. And, he wanted feedback from me as a family member. What did we see in it? And so that was just a really interesting, conversation, because neither of those had come up while she was living, at all. And I would love to be able to see the comparisons of, like you said, the different types of testing, and then the end of life, and the importance of getting these brain autopsies is just, in my mind, just critical. So I really urge people to sign up for that, be prepared, because it has to be done quickly, guys. You can't make that decision at the last minute. With that. So thank you for that information, Dr. Bergman. Jenny, I want to ask you, I'm really curious because I want to learn more about your background and Kemper Cognitive Wellness, because that began just about 3.5 years ago, but yet I know your family has a longer history in terms of caring for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So can you share a little bit more background with us?
Yeah, sure. A foundational belief here at Kemper is that it is possible to live well even with the diagnosis of dementia. And while we've only been around for about 3.5 years, our story began probably 25 years ago or more. My family was impacted has been impacted by Alzheimer's for generations. But after experiencing the gap in what was available in long-term care firsthand, Betty Kemper, who is an RN by background, and Kristen Kemper, who is a licensed nursing home administrator, envisioned something different, and really were pioneers in that regard. Over 25 years ago, 30 years ago, there wasn't a special care environment for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. They were just kind of lumped in with folks in a skilled environment, and that really just wasn't conducive to their needs. So they were among the first in Kemper House residential Alzheimer's and dementia care homes, and were formed. And so we're very proud of the work we've done there. Kind of find ourselves innovating again here 20 some years later with Kemper Cognitive Wellness. As I mentioned, this disease is really personal to our family, and we're really motivated personally to do everything we can to push back for the next generations. So we're here now in Cleveland, and we're emerging as one of the nation's leading brain health centers, and it's really exciting. We're helping people with Alzheimer's and dementia, individuals and families, with assessments, services, and supports for Alzheimer's and dementia. So it is definitely an exciting time to be here.
And that is fantastic, and it's so important, anyways, from my opinion, as a daughter who went through this, to be able to have all that support in one spot. This, one's over here and one's over here, and a team not really working together, it really piecemeals it, and it makes it much more difficult, for the families, as a whole. So I appreciate the work and the effort that you guys are putting towards this. I want to ask, because you had shared your family history, Alison, I would like to hear from you if you've been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. Absolutely. My mother had dementia in her 80s. She passed away in 2008. And I personally have experienced brain health issues in my 40s after struggling with digestive issues. I was experiencing things like brain fog and forgetting appointments and not being able to focus. So it was affecting me in my 40s. And this was after my mother had passed away. And then I found Kemper Cognitive Wellness. I got into health coaching, and I feel like it was just the universe came together and put me where I was supposed to be. So I'm so excited to be part of this, improving brain health, improving the landscape of dementia, because I too have the ApoE4 gene. So personally, for myself, I want to improve my health, improve my brain health, and, I want to help others who are struggling. So I'm so excited to be here at Kemper Cognitive Wellness and part of this mission.
Wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's a personal story. I know I've had an issue only one time, but it scared the heck out of me where I couldn't remember what something was. And I think it might have been more stress induced, but my eyes have been open ever since. And my hot water heater went out. My brother came over to fix it and he's like, go get your wrench. And I'm like a girl that has all my tools in my closet and stuff. And unless my husband would steal them sometimes and not put them back. And I went up there and I'm like, what's a wrench? I mean, I literally, what's a wrench? And I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find it. And then I went downstairs with this piece of paper and pad of paper and pen. And I said, can you draw me a picture? It still just wrecks me to my core thinking. And so Scott, my brother's looking at me like, well, are you yanking my chain? What's going on here? You have all kinds of tools up there. And I'm like, and I went back up. I still couldn't find it. And that was the only time it happened, but it was like, oh my gosh, if this is what people feel on a daily basis, it was just, I mean, it just gave me a whole nother level of coping skills and the emotional side and being fearful for yourself and being embarrassed, with others. And I mean, it was just a really impactful experience for me. So I can totally relate. Dr. Bergman, how about you? Have you been personally touched by dementia in your family or circle of friends?
Yeah. So, I grew up volunteering in the assisted living facilities that Jenny talked about. So it was like mixed bags. You had a lot of people that just had physical ailments, but were cognitively intact. And you had a lot of people that were demented, but were physically intact. So I grew up, so most of my family passed away earlier of cancer. They didn't make it to their 70s and 80s, or heart disease, even, sometimes even before I was born in the 50s. But that was in different times where a lot of smoking, a lot of stress. Not that there's not a lot of stress now, but it was different times. It was different times. For me personally, though, I started having profound memory loss when I was in my early 30s, when I was doing my training, so my training in residency, and it was crazy. I mean, it was like I went for neuropsych testing and brain imaging, saw a neurologist, and it wasn't dementia, it wasn't there was nothing that could say, hey, this is neurodegenerative, but like it was very scary. Like I wouldn't remember what we're doing in rounds in the hospital, seeing an EKG 90 minutes ago down in an emergency room when we were admitting a patient. I was responsible to manage a team. I was responsible, obviously, for patient care. So that was probably of the more frightening, if not the most frightening, period of time in my life. But what it led to was the discovery of much of, or at least the foundations of what we're doing now at Kemper Cognitive Wellness. I mean, it really was. It was through sort of like Alison's story, like getting improved and getting better. I mean, I went, just so you get some hard facts, we used to have to take practice national board exams. This is like an 8-hour, one of these horrible 8-hour multiple choice tests where you've studied for months, and it's like 8 hours determines everything. Right? So it's a high stakes exam, and you get used to taking those if you go through enough school, and always had those, probably to some degree. Medicine comes up and up and up over again. And my first year, I got in the 10th percentile. That's the bottom 10th percentile. So the residency programs gets real worried about that, because part of the way they're judged is, if they're graduates, people that go through their specialty training, mine was internal medicine at the time, can pass the test, and certainly pass the test on the first time is really the measure that matters. And the next year, my second year of a 3-year residency, I got in the 8th percentile, so the lowest 8%. They had never had a person that passed the boards in the first time that had been under 10% at any point in the training. anyways, I got in the 88th percentile when we actually took the national board exams, and that was amazing. And it was through some basic things, some basic things, but really sometimes can move the needle. And so really at any age, any stage, like if you can apply some of the things that we're talking about, some of it's really not rocket science. It's basic, but just has to be done. And if you do it, it's like a habit. If you can create habit out of it, because we all have stress, we are going to have life's going to get in the way, we'll have disruptors, we'll have bills to pay. But if you can make more of these things routine in your life, so you just like, you don't think about brushing your teeth, like you don't think about certain things, that's going to move the needle. And it also doesn't matter if you didn't start to a 65 or 70. Like you can start at 75, you can still get gains. Just better if you start at 45. It's better if you start at 25. Certainly it's better to start at 5 years old, but nobody does. So, any time you start. But that's my story with cognitive impairment. Very, very frightening. Very frightening.
Very personal. And like you said, in terms of starting, it's kind of like financial planning. We should all do it earlier, or even getting our healthcare directives and stuff in order. We should do it when we're 18 years old, get those power of attorneys. Very few people do. Though I have heard a couple of people are starting to now do that as gifts for graduation, which I think, what a cool idea that is, to try to shift things around. Well, you had, mentioned again about just becoming an emerging leader with your organization. Can you go a little deeper in terms of what kind of work do you do? If I come knocking on your door, what's the process?
Yeah. So I think if people are familiar with the work, functional medicine approach, or Dale Bredesen's been a big inspiration to our work with this sort of recode. And like Jenny, or like you mentioned at the beginning, we were on one publication with him for some cases where we had some improvements. That's a lot of kind of how we begin our assessments. So we're looking at a deep dive. We want to get the basics. Are you exercising? How do you sleep? We find loads and loads of cases of undiagnosed sleep apnea or something called REM, sleep behavior disorders, which can be present in Parkinson's or Lewy body disease. And that could be something that a problem with sleep, really restless sleeping, acting out dreams that can happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of development of something like Parkinson's or Lewy body disease. So we look deeply into the food that people are eating and their nutrition status. We'll definitely measure things like micronutrients with blood tests. We're looking at exercise. Alison can talk much more about some of the exercise stuff that we're doing, which is one of the most exciting parts of what we're doing. And we look at how people are handling stress. We have different ways we can sort of measure stress with subjective testing, but are peer-reviewed, highly validated things. And then we have some tests that we can do to look at stress hormones like cortisol. We look at hormones, inflammatory factors, advanced testing in cholesterol, and then we start with that. That's really where we start. We'll look at genetics. We'll look at like ApoE4. We still look at MTHFR to get a sense about neurotransmitters, which is MTHFR, for those who don't know, is a methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene. That's a fairly inexpensive test that you can get. And some feel that it points to how you're handling neurotransmitters. Does it impede or impair one's ability to detoxify from just sort of the usual things that we all go through from day to day? So that's where we start our assessments. And we also do, we want to see how the brain is functioning. So we have some computerized. So for some people that are a little bit sicker, we stick with the paper and pencil or paper and pen kind of screening tests, or I'll send someone to a neuropsychologist. But we also do more extended batteries of neuropsychologic testing to see just, objectively, how is someone performing cognitively in not just in memory, but, am I flexible in my thinking? How fast do I process things? Can I shift attention easily? Can I pay attention? Right? Because if we can hone in on where the problem is, like if somebody has problems paying attention, so that's going to impact their memory, that's going to impact their executive functions. And if you can deal with the attention issue through a variety of ways, then you should see improvements in a few of these other domains, like memory should improve. But so it's not primarily a memory problem, it's primarily an attention problem. So we try to sort of figure through some of that. And then we also want to know, how is someone's brain functioning, right? How is their brain actually functioning, like in real time? So we do 19-channel EEGs, and we feed it to some software, and we produce what's called a QEEG, or a brain map, as they're sometimes called. And that will give us another piece of information, like we're measuring the brain directly, which has been a problem in psychiatry and neurology to some degree. Like we'll get MRIs or CAT scans, but we're not measuring actual functioning of the brain. Is the brain processing things normally? Is there too much of a certain kind of activity in one place? Is there evidence of poor blood flow that needs to be addressed more aggressively? Is there indications of anxiety or problems sleeping, et cetera, et cetera? So there's a lot. So then we put that all together in an assessment, and we create a plan for people, right? And so that's just like my part. The most important part then comes after that, and so we move in through the team, right? Because I could give people pieces of paper with what the problem is all day, but if there isn't an organized plan that's sort of broken down, most people have no shot. Like, there's a few people that are super organized. You kind of give them the plan, they can do it. But most of us have to have this broken out over time, and it's still hard. I mean, it's still hard. We still have people that are challenged by it, but they'll meet with Alison, meet with a health coach, right? And okay, so what do I do? So okay, first we need to do this. We prioritize what are the most important things. Do we have supplements? Do we have hormones? Like kind of breaking up these into goals that are achievable over the course of several months, because this takes months. I mean, we'll have people that get results in a couple of weeks, but oftentimes it will take months. And then we'll meet with our dietitian or nutritionist. What's the optimal meal plan? Some people are already eating amazing, right? So going from a good diet to a great diet doesn't always do it. But if someone's sensitive to a food, even though they're eating really well, that can be a game changer. Stomach, right? And there's this whole gut-brain connection. Sometimes if you dial in on the GI issues, or there's too much bacteria, or somebody doesn't have enough digestive enzymes, all of those things can play a role, sometimes really significantly, and sometimes just sort of a minor role, like the triangle in the back of the orchestra. But you know what I mean? But that's still part of the music. So we have kind of a symphony going on over here, and so it really, really is. We've really kind of worked hard to make it a real team approach, and not just sort of in individual, like a health coach center or doctor centric. We try to make it about the individuals that are coming through, and then we add. I think there's a lot of people that kind of do this kind of work, like the brothers in functional medicine, that don't have the depth of experience and understanding that we have at Kemper Cognitive Wellness in terms of dementia. It's one of the reasons I was excited to come work here, was because I always felt like, you can make recommendations all day long, but if you don't have a team that really understands the issue with dementia, and we don't get me wrong, we don't know everything, we're constantly learning, but if you don't have a team that really gets it, and so we have a family dementia coach, right? So she's a social worker, has been working with Kemper, with the Kemper houses for 15, 16 years. And she works with families on, that are having stress, or that understand what's happening. Why are these communication issues happening? What's with sundowning? How do we, and you can help solve some of these problems. We'll get people together for some group things, some sort of support groups, if you will. And so there's some group strategizing, just, as just other people sort of listen and are going through the same thing. And all of those things we get really good feedback about the kind of care we're delivering. I think people sense that we care about people. So you can give people information. We care about the results. And I think we're very, very proud of the work we're doing. So, and then I think that's for people. There's still this notion of, okay, somebody's got Alzheimer's and they're super sick, but we also see people that are here because my dad had Alzheimer's and I don't want to have Alzheimer's and I'm 55 years old. Give me a plan, I'll follow it for the rest of my life, kind of thing. And then we have everybody in between, like Jenny mentioned. And then we also treat precursors. There's PTSD as a risk factor for Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression, risk factors for Alzheimer's. Higher rates, ADHD, risk factor for Alzheimer's. So so you have to, we're just trying to treat everything that has to do with cognition and might lead to cognitive impairment. So there's lots to do.
Well, you covered a lot of my questions. I was going to ask about HD, because I was thinking how many people, especially the younger population, that number in itself has exploded, and what's going to be the ripple effect from that. Now we're going to have the COVID explosion on top of, there's just constantly different things.
The HD, you mean hormone replacement or hormone therapy? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
HD?
no, I'm sorry, ADHD.
Oh, ADHD. Yeah,
Yep.
ADHD.
Sorry about that. And then I wanted to know, you listed a pretty long list of things that you check. How many appointments is that? Roughly, how
Well,
long does that take?
yeah, so there are a lot of ways to do it. We do it our way. Our way is we want to get as much of the story and sort of data collected up front, because then we can get moving. So we spend, somebody's in the office for 2.5 to 3 hours first for the first visit. So it's a big day. It's a big event. People are usually pretty up for it, and then with the data, it takes a couple weeks to sort of process all the data, get labs back, et cetera. And then we'll come back and we'll spend a couple hours, an hour and a half or so, reviewing the information with someone and installing the plan. And then follow-up can be different. It's sort of follow-up becomes individualized based on the individual, our patient's reality. What they need, what they can do, how much progress they're making, what they think about the initial recommendations. But people can follow up, in a couple months to several months. And if someone's just there for prevention, probably once or twice a year is probably adequate. But if we're moving through things, I think Jenny might have some more to say about that.
I would just comment that we do ask our clients to do a bit of homework before they come into the office. So we're wanting to collect a lot of personal lifetime history of health information. We want to know what they're eating over the course of 3 or 4 days, what their readiness is for change. And we do comprehensive data collection on the front end. And that just provides for an even richer experience when you come in and spend time with Dr. Bergman. We don't spend that time collecting all your medications because you've already provided that to us. Dr. Bergman has an opportunity to review that information before you are even sitting in his office with him. And you'll delve into that and usually uncover even more and just have a really rich conversation that really sets the foundation and gets us off and running, I guess. So
yeah, and I should add one more thing. The team-based approach really was a change. I've practiced since the end of my training. I really haven't practiced just sort of on my own. I've really made a conscious effort to be part of a healthcare team. It's just so clear that that's what it's at least closer to what people need. I still think we have a long way to go in kind of traditional, at least American healthcare, even though I think our healthcare system is far superior to many others around the world. But still, it doesn't mean we can't improve quite a bit. So we are already moving away from sort of the doctor-centric form of practice. But there are things people can do. We have some people that don't even see me. Like they'll see only Alison for healthcare. They'll see only Nikki, our dietitian. And then more and more. So what we found is not everybody can get to us. Right? Not everybody can get to us for one reason or another. And so we were thinking, okay, so how else can we affect people? How else can we impact people? And when we sort of identified a gap, in that a lot of once someone gets a diagnosis of dementia, there's this sort of, okay, what do I do? And there are, as you know, again, as you feature, there are many resources around. But our feeling was that the vast majority of those resources are just sort of focused on the way things were done 7+ years ago, just sort of, and what we would consider humbly but pretty confidently old news, right? There are breakthroughs in neuroscience and rehabilitation therapies. There's this whole concept of reablement. We've seen some really fascinating things with a small group of people in some of the Kemper houses, with really sort of some startling improvements with some basic things, and then to make things even more, to sort of push out even more, to make this kind of thing accessible to people, we created an online course called Live Well with Dementia. And the Live Well with Dementia course is a lot of what we talk about for folks that are in sort of in mild cognitive impairment or early dementia stage, and even a little bit further along. But we talk about really all of the things we're talking about. We give people information that they can take to their doctor. Talk about food. We talk about caregivers, care partners, stress, sleep, sundowning, all the financial and medical stuff that comes up. We talk about some really interesting technologies, and a lot of this stuff, like if you're the kind of person that, hey, I need to hear it, I need to have it organized, I need some resources, like it's doable. Like it's doable because we're all going through our day anyways, and it's encouraging to me meeting more and more people that are not saying, hey, I just got diagnosed with dementia, I give up. They're saying, I got diagnosed with dementia, what can I do now? That wasn't, as you know, Laura, I mean, that wasn't really, people weren't asking that question as in the same way 10, not even 10 years ago. I mean, it's really, in my experience, really fairly recently. I started my training in 2006, 7, and I mean, it's like changed a lot since then.
Dramatically, yeah. One question I do want to ask really quickly, because I see this as a need, and I hear it from people. They want to go to a specialty clinic, but it might not be in their area. They're willing to fly out, do all the initial stuff for the diagnosis, but then they'd like to be supported by kind of telehealth. And then even if there are tests and stuff they need to do, get those locally, but then shared with you. Is that something that you guys do?
Oh yeah, all the time, routinely. Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
telehealth is a little sticky wicket in terms of medical liability and being boarded. But we COVID really opened things up quite a bit for us. But we were doing a lot of telehealth even before then. But yes, so as long as people come here, so we can get the good information that we need face to face one time. I think we have many patients that all of their follow up have been, let's say, on telehealth only. So I think all of us, including Alison can tell you a little bit more about some of the things she's doing. But like, when it comes to seeing the doctor, seeing a dietitian, seeing a health coach, and then even one of the things that we've, and it's not even so recently, we've been doing this for a while now, the brain boot camp, which Alison runs. I get the chills in a good way almost every time I think about it, because it's really taking the best of what we know in neuroscience to move the needle on cognitive improvement, and we've sort of put it in this fun to do, in a way you can interact with other people. And we have it certainly in person. Some people prefer in person, but there's the ability to do this on Zoom online now, and so it's phenomenal. I hope Alison has a chance to talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's the perfect segue, because I was going to ask Alison to talk about the Brain Boot Camp, so that we can learn a little bit more about how it was created and what's it all about.
So I'm really excited to talk about this, and sometimes I get like a runaway train, but I want to like unpack all the information and not leave, any stone unturned. But it was about a year ago, Jenny came to me and said, I'd really like you to get this brain health trainer certification, because, I have this vision for like a brain boot camp. And I've been involved in exercise my whole life. I have a background as a competitive figure skater, a dancer, a group fitness instructor. I've always known the benefits of movement, but I never really knew how good they are for brain health. So I was excited to, get this certification. And shout out to Ryan Glatt, who is the creator of the Certified Brain Health Trainer course. He's just super smart, super excited young man. I've learned so much from him. But at the time, there was the certified brain health trainers were doing one-on-one, and there wasn't this group model. So it was kind of something that I had to create from the ground up. And I do my best being challenged to come up with things creatively. So I put together a group program with what I learned in the course, and it's grown, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. So let me just kind of tell you what it's about. So Brain Boot Camp, we combine a mental task with physical exercise, or sometimes we call it movement, because depending on who you are, exercise can be like taboo. So don't worry. And when you hear the word boot camp, I'm not like a drill sergeant. I'm not cracking the whip. I mean, it's just, fun little term, but we do have fun. I do make you move, but it's according to the person's fitness level and their level of ability. So I always take that into consideration. So we combine physical exercises with a mental task. Now, the reason we do this is research has shown that when we do this combination training, that it creates more brain cells and helps us maintain these brain cells more than if we did physical exercise by itself or mental training by itself, like Sudoku or crossword puzzles. That being said, I'm not giving you a pass for getting out of exercise. Exercise is still number one for brain health. And the reason being is we get our heart rate above a resting level. So it increases oxygen and increases blood flow to the brain. This is crucial for brain health. So oxygen and blood flow, crucial for brain health. The number one way you can get it is exercise. Now, I get some of you don't exercise, but as Dr. Bergman mentioned earlier about addressing brain health, start somewhere. Just start, okay? Don't wait. It's never too late. So we do this combination training, which facilitates the oxygen and the blood flow because it creates more brain cells. And I'm going to give you an example of what that exercise looks like, because I just said a lot of things and people are going to be like, well, what does that mean? Okay, so we would start by marching in place, okay? And then I would say, let's start doing an overhead press. This is an overhead press while we're marching. So we're getting our heart rate up. We're getting that oxygen flowing, that blood flowing. Then we bring in the mental task. So that would be, I'm going to have you subtract by sevens, starting with 100. So while you're moving, you're doing this mental task. Now, if this mental task is too difficult, I can certainly modify it. I could say, okay, well, let's subtract by fives. Or if subtraction is too hard, maybe we try addition by twos, starting with 1. So let's start adding by twos. Now, if the physical movement is too difficult, we can certainly take that down to just marching, or maybe you want to stay seated and you want to just do the overhead press. If the physical movement is too easy, I would give you a set of hand weights. And depending on your level of ability, it could be a set of 1-pound hand weights, or it could be a set of 10-pound hand weights. Why do I want to give you those hand weights to make it harder for you? Because I want you to get your oxygen rate up. Also, when we include strength training and cardio exercise increase chemicals in our body, which send a signal to our brain, telling our brain to grow and to function better. So let me say that again. Exercise, cardiovascular, and strength training, when you do it, sends signals to your brain to grow and function better. Okay, so I can't think of a better reason to do exercise. And I want to give you some feedback from some of our participants. I have one woman that said since she started Brain Boot Camp, she has an improved focus and her brain fog has lifted. Another woman I work with, a client, one-on-one, I would say she was very fragile and frail when she came to me. She has improved leg strength. She has improved lower body strength. She also has a better reaction time to things, and she can manage her daily calendar, her daily activities on her own. She can keep track of them, something that she could not do before. And I'm just going to kind of backpedal to the leg strength. You're going to say, well, why is leg strength important? Because leg strength correlates to better brain health and bigger brains. I always like to use a analogy of a visual. So I want you to think of a table. If a table has a strong base, it most likely won't topple over. But if it has a weak base, it could topple. So if you have weak leg strength, you could be prone to falling, which means you could end up in the emergency room and who knows what else from there. So that's why leg strength is so important. So we use weights in brain boot camp. We do cardio exercise, and we also do balancing exercise as well. And we can do that in the form of Tai Chi moves. I find our seniors are very open and receptive to the Tai Chi movements, and where I incorporate breath work. And the reason I do this is it increases strength, it increases flexibility, it improves mood, and it improves cognition. So this is kind of like all the ingredients that I put in the soup of brain boot camp. I know I unpacked a lot.
No, that is
Sorry.
wonderful. It was funny because when you were talking about leg strength, I put a note on in fall prevention, and then it's like, nope, she hit that, because that is such a big scare, especially as people get older. I'm wondering how often and how long are sessions?
Sure. So right now we run boot camp in person and virtually by the month. So 4 sessions in a month. But ideally, if you want to see improvement from this mental and physical training, you want to do it twice a week for at least a period of 3 months. So, and that's what I noticed, the people who are commenting, giving me this good feedback, which I'm so excited to hear. This is like, I absolutely love doing this because I love the feedback I'm getting, but it's been after a period of about 2 to 3 months that they're starting to see the needle move.
Mari, I want to highlight something here that Alison's talking about because I'm not sure it's so obvious. I think a lot of us think about, oh, yeah, leg strength improved, therefore less falls, less of some of the things that will take someone as they get more frail. But it's subtle, although Alison really spelled it out. But if you're still sort of in the same mindset as, eating fat is unhealthy, and doing exercise helps my body, and you're still in sort of this idea that we uncouple the brain and the mood with the body, and we don't see them as one. So they're absolutely one. So muscles, to some extent, are the brain, right? Alison talked about some of the chemicals that sort of like prime the brain. And just like somebody wouldn't expect to go to, I've met so many people that went to like 2 or 3 physical therapy appointments. They didn't do the exercise. Well, it didn't help. Physical therapy didn't help. The 3 appointments after shoulder surgery, or they have like a partially torn shoulder. Like, so people have partial brain damage, ADHD, brain fog. Certainly, if you get into something like mild cognitive impairment and dementia, like it takes a while to see improvement. So sometimes people get frustrated. They don't do that. They don't see results in 2 or 3 weeks. We're turning an aircraft carrier, right? We're melting a glacier. It takes a while. So maybe melting a glacier is probably a bad example because no one wants to melt glaciers. But you know what I'm saying? Like it can take a while, and it's what you're doing with your body when she adds in the cognitive exercise. It's like an accelerant. It's like a lighter fluid, putting lighter fluid on a fire. It's amazing. Maybe another bad example, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, no, that is wonderful. How long are the sessions, Alison?
They're 45 minutes, and we start with a warm-up, and we do about a half hour of a combination of this dual tasking, mental and physical training, and we incorporate weights, we incorporate the balance training, and no one class is the same. There's always variety. But that being said, we revisit some things we've done previously to see if there's any improvement. And there's so much I want to mention here. One is the group environment. They love the group environment. Socializing is so good for our mental health, our brain health. You're exercising, you're moving with like-minded people. They all want to improve their brain health, and they bond together and they cheer each other on. So it's a fun environment. When you hear that boot camp, I'm not the taskmaster. We're all about fun while we're accomplishing our goals. The other thing is, when I mention strength training, especially to women, they go, "Ooh, I don't want to lift weights." Ladies, you are not going to build those bulky muscles. You are going to tone and you're going to get stronger. And that's what we want to see, is that strength being built. So, and we address all those 4 cognitive tasks in Brain Boot Camp. That's the memory, the attention, the processing speed, and the executive function. And really, all the tasks we do kind of touch on all those 4 areas, but one task may lean more heavily towards one area.
Okay, so get rid of the sag and tone, basically, with that. Now, can people participate in this that haven't gone through, your process as a whole? Is that something that they can sign up for? And if so, is there a fee for that? And how does that work?
Absolutely. They can just sign up for Brain Boot Camp. And like I said, they can do it virtually or in person. And Jenny, maybe you can speak to the cost.
I think they come to $8 a session. Is that
Yes.
right?
32 for the month, so
Mhm.
$8 a session. And
in person's a bit more, but
yeah, a few dollars more maybe.
Yeah, you can, if you're interested in learning more, you can go to our website, kemperwellness.com/bootcamp, and you can sign up there. We're actually coming forth with a monthly online subscription where we'll have classes, live and then on demand. So we're excited. Something else to watch for.
Oh, that's fantastic and extremely reasonable. Has insurance stepped in to cover this? I know a lot of times they'll cover like gym costs and things like that, but it's like, hey, they need to get on target with this. Hello.
No, Lori, it's so new. I'm not sure how individual insurance plans work, if people can submit for reimbursement for something like this. We should look into like how, like silver sneakers. It's just another wonderful opportunity for folks to, work their brains and bodies. And
maybe even hook up with AARP. They seem to have a lot of leverage with this stuff. Might be a good resource on that.
Yeah.
While we're talking money, is your clinic private pay, or is any of it covered by insurance? That's probably a question that people have, and I'm not even sure who to point that one to.
Yeah, I can take that. It is private pay. Unfortunately, insurance companies generally aren't paying for this type of preventative care. And they certainly aren't paying for the significant amount of time that we like to spend with people to really get to the root and then, develop the program that's going to, I think, as Dr. Bergman said, turn the aircraft or turn that, turn the Titanic, so to speak. So it is all private pay. We do health savings accounts and flexible spending accounts generally cover services that we offer. We just direct folks to check with their individual plans. But for folks that are, in their 50s or 60s and are thinking about prevention, that's a great way to go. And of course, it's deductible on your insurance. So for whatever that's worth.
Well, that is good to know. And, and I think so many more people, they want more than 15 minutes of their doctor's time. They really are leaning towards, even if it's not a cure, it's a care in terms of support. And, this churning through the clinic, it's like, I had a doctor's appointment the other week, and the doctor's like, "You were 2 minutes late." And I'm like, well, I really wasn't. They just got me into the room 2 minutes late. But I mean, she just kept reminding me that my 15 minutes was up. And she was wonderful, but she was extremely conscious. She had a line out there, booked with rooms. And I thought, well, this isn't a real warm and fuzzy type of meeting. And we were covering some important things to me, you know, and it was like, well, no, you're going to need to make another appointment so we can dive into that. And I'm like, I don't think we can cover that in 15 minutes either.
It's true. It's true. And, folks that are willing to make the investment do find that it's well worth it. And in some cases, if you don't, rather tongue in cheek, but if you're not willing to pay for it now, you're certainly going to pay for it later. And there's so much to do now, whereas the longer you wait, the options become less. So,
well, and I think, we're in this mindset of, as a society of stepping up, stepping in and taking more control of what we want our futures to be like. And so, that seems to align really well, with that kind of
exactly.
raise of consciousness, I guess I'll call it, as a whole. And I think whenever you step in and step up to something you believe in, I think your mental health goes up too, just automatically, because you feel attached to some kind of purpose and belief and structure, and you've got this support that apparently you were feeling something was missing, and so that hole's been filled. And I don't think that is given enough credit in terms of these team approach, where you really are looking at them as individuals, and how do we move you through this to improve your situation. Dr. Bergman, I want you to talk, if you don't mind. Is there maybe a couple of success stories that you can share with us of people coming to your wellness center and how families have been touched?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, that's really the whole point, right? I mean, what are we could talk about all this stuff, but if we're not getting results for people, it doesn't really matter. Just an idea. I mean, we mentioned the 2 cases we published in the 100-case reversal of cognitive decline, and those people had really well documented cases of amnestic mild cognitive impairment. So that they had all the changes in the brain of Alzheimer's, and those 2 improved. I can tell you, like, just across the spectrum, we could talk about people that are concerned or have subjective cognitive impairment, but have risks. So in the new lens, that's Alzheimer's. That's the beginning of, that's like a stage 1 breast cancer, right? Like, just take it out, right? Like, if you can identify it early, take it out, right? So, this is a woman who was 77 years old, whose mother was actually living and still lives in one of the Kemper houses, and she's concerned, right? And so she only saw me twice. Maybe she had a 3rd visit, but mostly it was just she did the 1st visit. There were recommendations in the 2nd visit, and we heard from her a few months later, so much better cognitively. And so that should be typical, right? If you get some people early, that should be the kind of typical common improvement. Like, people have high blood sugar and high A1, average blood sugar that's close to diabetes. If they change a couple things about the way they do their eating, exercise, like, those typically come down, unless it's genetic or there's something else at play that's harder to tease out. Like, people should respond with some basics. I'll think of another woman. She's 59 years old. When we first saw her, another person whose mother passed away in a nursing home of Alzheimer's in her late 70s. This woman was having some of the moments that Alison described before, sort of like these, or that you described, Lori, like these very scary moments. She was running in the same direction, she would run the same course for 2 or 3 years, and then got lost a couple times, was becoming very inefficient at work. She wasn't able to remember anything, writing lists, like really, really scary stuff in her sort of early mid-50s into her late 50s. And, she had done the basics, the exercise and and eating right. And she was doing all that and still was struggling. And for her, what moved the needle, there were 2 things that really moved the needle for her. One was hormone replacement therapy, estrogen, progesterone, etc. So those helped her really quite a bit. And for a lot of people, women in particular, hormone replacement can, but not always, but can certainly turn the light bulb on. I mean, it really can make a difference for some people, the right candidate. And then, she also discovered meditation in a serious way, like, just a regular practice. And because of all the stress, so was able to sort of just kind of settle her down. Now, some people can't meditate, and there's some other things that we will recommend people that they really have a hard time meditating. But that was, it's another, so you have subjective cognitive impairment. This woman the woman I just mentioned had already very abnormal brain scores. And within, I think it was 9 months, we repeated her test. Everything went from, several areas, especially correlating with Alzheimer's and dementia, that were very, very out of range on the testing that we do here, went either to average or above average. So it was another sort of exciting moment. Now we recently had a woman that's been seeing us for a few times now, and she's in her early 70s, and she just moved back home on her own with Alzheimer's. Her family took her, decided to do a boot camp of all the things we're talking, and we'll see how it goes. But this is the kind of thing I just couldn't even conceive that was possible. The family, like in my training, even 5 years ago, used to ask me something that was possible. But we collectively, we learn from the people that come see us, right? So we're learning ourselves. We're continuing to sort of educate ourselves, but we're also learning about what's possible from our patients, from the people that come and see us that are living through this or with this. And so I don't know, we talk about all of our patients, or most of them, pretty much every week, and in our conferences. And it's when we have wins and successes, it's really exciting. It's really, really exciting.
So one of the things that sounds like with this program is, not only is it just for the person with dementia, but you're educating the families as well, because in order to give that kind of support, and I think that's one of the big shifts just in the past 5 years, or so. I remember, what was it, in 2013, launching the first dementia-friendly community in the U.S. We hadn't had that. Now we're seeing them pop up all over the place, which is really exciting, getting that education in place, and more people are sharing ideas of, how do you live graciously with this disease? What can we control? And the trials and stuff are expanding way past just the plaques and tangles theory. Sleep came out. I remember Dr. Tansey going, I used to pride myself on being a multitasker and not getting a whole heck of a lot of sleep, but I'm changing that now, and that was just really a few years ago. And so people, I think, are starting to realize that they have more control over much more than what they ever thought. And, if nothing else, it's worth a try, to try to change those things and see. People have heard, over the years, maybe even dehydration, can be an issue, or, vitamin B, or several of them, getting those levels off, for hormones. There's a lot of things that can be corrected to kind of align those things back in place, that for so many years everyone was just like throwing the towel. Here it is, nothing to do. And so it's really nice to see these changes come into place. Jenny, I want to ask you, how do folks learn more about, the Kemper Cognitive Wellness?
Well, of course, you can visit us online at kemperwellness.com. You can also give us a call at 855-337-1400. Of course, we're on social media, Facebook, Instagram. And we mentioned our course for caregivers earlier, Live Well with Dementia. You can learn more about that at livewellwithdementia.com. Also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. So we welcome a call or an email also at hello@kemperwellness.com is another way to reach out.
Yep, I was just going to mention your email, because even that is friendly. It's not info at, it's hello, kind of a welcome thing. And to me, that's a big differentiating factor in and of itself, along with all the other things that you do and provide. I can't thank you guys enough for being on the show. This has been really, really informative. And I hope people run and sign up for your boot camp, Alison, because, my gosh, $32 a month. You can't beat that. You really can't. Mm-hmm. And again, you can participate in this if you have dementia or not, with these trainings, as well as the program. You can look at prevention. Err on the side of reaching out, I guess, is what I'm trying to say to our audience.
Welcome a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And if I can mention, Lori, real quick, if they want to see what a class looks like, they can go to our Facebook page Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and under videos, there's several videos about brain boot camp and what it looks like, and I'll give some explanations and show some exercises. So if they want to actually see what it looks like, that's a great place to go.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us today. To our listeners, I hope that you like, click, and share this episode. I think it was just, like I said, filled with a ton of nuggets here, and in a great direct path in terms of getting on track and getting maybe some of your questions answered, and allowing you to make better choices and see how much control you really can have on, is this going to get you and to what level? And there's no guarantees. Dementia knows no boundaries by any stretch, but I know I'm a firm believer that we can kind of hold it off, and change the direction in terms of how much control it has over our bodies, our minds, and our souls, because they're all connected once you get that diagnosis, boy, and can really take you for a spin. So know that there are people out there that want to support you and help you. And so please check out Kemper Cognitive Wellness. Again, you can go to their site, kemperwellness.com, or like Alison just said, check out their Facebook page to check out a video for that brain boot camp as well. In closing, I just, again, want to thank everybody, and you can always check out information on what Alzheimer's Speaks is doing at alzheimersspeaks.com. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.